Awesome.
Reverend Kevin Lee, thank you for joining me again. We're going to have some discussion. We're sort of on the same path in terms of looking at the various paranormal phenomena, whether it be physical mediumship or whether it be UFOs, that there's some sort of spiritual component to it. And
Right.
I think you're one of the experts. I don't know if you've talked to Carla Golden. She's also a minister in Florida there who has had some interviews with experiencers where she sees a spiritual component and she wants to talk to them.
Beautiful. No, it makes total sense. I mean, the expression of divine life is in all beings, and so it touches upon everything. We just don't really have the terminology. Well, we're starting to have terminology for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about before we start. I mean, you can explain to me precipitation mediumship. I didn't know about it until I heard about you. So can you sort of explain to people what actually goes on? Because it's almost like the most bizarre sort of phenomena. I guess what do they call it? Like a sort of where they're showing off for their demonstrative phenomena, which shows how powerful this can be. And you do this, correct?
Right. Well, it's a process of development that I'm working on. It takes years of development, so it's begun. I can say that honestly, the phenomena has begun for me. But is it at an expert level of some of the artifacts that I have? No. But one day it will be. It just takes time. It can take upwards of 15, 17 years for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I do know of one young man who probably about 8 years ago, it came forward after 6.5 years of development,
Okay.
which was pretty shocking. But basically, precipitation mediumship just means that spirits, typically spirit guides, will work with your loved ones, typically maybe even your spiritual teachers, to produce images or writings or even signatures that are highly evidential, recognizable, very exacting, very heartfelt, or very synchronistic to whatever's taking place in your life at that time. And they'll produce these images and writings onto little card canvases, sometimes cloth. And I've even heard of walls and different things like that, bed sheets. And but they do this to show that there's a continuity of life. So it's just another demonstration of the evidence of the continuity of life. And it's just a beautiful expression. The phenomena is incredibly beautiful because it's very artistic. And it changed my life 13 years ago. And I remember saying to myself when I went home and had little tears in my eyes, and I said, whatever the hell this is that this old man just did, I want to do that. And I'm going to figure out what it is, and I'm going to research it, and I'm going to bring it to the world. And I actually have.
Yeah.
And it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, that's something that I would actually fly down. If somebody was going to do that, I would fly down to Florida just to see this. Describe the box. Like, so you have a bunch of people in a room, like a seance thing.
Sure.
And you put all these blank cards in the box, you seal the box.
Yep. So basically, I didn't bring it into the office today, but basically, the number one physical medium in the world who demonstrates precipitation medium is Reverend Hoyt Robinette. I always give him props. He's my mentor, my dear friend. And the way he works, he has a little basket, and it basically is like a snake charmer's basket, about yay big, probably a good foot, I'd say foot and a half across, and maybe yay deep. And it contains crayons, colored pencils, markers, Sharpies, even paints and pastels, pieces of writing lead, old pencils and things, and even gel pens. And these are placed in there between layers of blank index cards, and it's placed very much like a lasagna style. So different layers of cards and colors, and cards and colors are stacked. The lid goes on, which creates the dark seance room environment. Now, you mentioned this happens in a seance room. Not necessarily. A lot of times he does these in banquet halls, in open spaces where there's a lot of light, just ambient light. And the sunlight can be pouring in, but the key point is inside that little basket, the container, that sacred container, is the dark space that allows the phenomena of spirit to work. And without that, it's incredibly hard for them to produce the phenomena. I will not say it's impossible, because I have witnessed one time in red light through another medium, one of my founding mediums of my church system. He was able to actually produce, with Spirit's help, and all of our help, contributing prayers and mantras and energy and all of this attention. And in the red light, we physically saw images phase. I can just describe it as phasing into our reality. The moment he said, Spirit told him they're coming in. And then they suddenly appeared on all these cards that were laid out like pretty much like you fan out gaming cards on a table, like a magician. And they had been there on the table for a good 30 to 45 minutes with us, looking at them, humming, singing, mantraing, praying, sending energy, talking. And right when he said, Spirit said, they're right on the edge of the ethers. They're ready to push into our dimension. They certainly did, right in front of us. And I was shocked. I have never witnessed anything like that in any kind of lighted condition. Typically, it always takes place in that little container, and it definitely sets up questions in your mind of, wait a minute, he must be a magician because his hands must have been incredibly fast to get those in there. But we were the ones who put the cards into there. We were the one who put the crayons and the colors, and we sealed it, and we were even holding the basket or the container. So if he's not doing it, and we're not doing it, who's doing it? It's Spirit. And truly beautiful. I've seen some remarkably evidential images of loved ones who've passed on, and people were in the room. Hidden diseases that people didn't want others to know about that they were experiencing were subtly brought up, and then the person shared with the room why they received this card with a very specific symbology on it. And it truly amazing stuff.
So if you have 16 people in the room, do they all get a card? Like, does it always work 100%?
As long as you have an expert, an expert medium, one who's highly developed. And typically we'll have about 25 people in the room, sometimes 28 to 30, and every single person will get one. A good friend of mine, again, that I mentioned, who developed very quickly within about 6.5 years, I would say he could probably produce about 5 to maybe 10 cards in about 30 to 45 minutes. And that's still remarkable that anything comes through. But what I've noticed is in those experiences, the cards are being developed within a matter of seconds, because the medium is usually saying, they're telling me your card is almost finished. And the readings take, I'd say the public message work takes about probably 2 or 3 minutes per person in the room, because you got to get through 25 people. So the messages have to be quick. And
so he's giving messages as well to the,
yes.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
So typically the medium will either be blindfolded or will be sitting in a chair in an altered state. And if they're blindfolded, the medium will probably be picking pieces of paper that we've pre-filled out with some information. It's all folded up. He can't see it. His eyes are taped and his mask is on and whatnot. And he literally is just bringing through what he hears clairaudiently and seeing clairvoyantly or sensing clairsentiently. And the messages come forward that are highly evidential, and he will tell you, they're telling me XYZ or somebody will be on your card. You'll get your answer on your card. You'll see your daughter on your card, things like that. And sure enough, that's exactly what the person receives. So it's really, you get a lot for your money. I hate to say money, but it's an experience where we're supporting the work of the ministry of the medium. So we definitely make contributions. And but the work is so beautiful. It's incredibly healing. I've seen people's lives change. It changed my life. So I know the power of this rare form of mediumship.
And so you have a church. Can you maybe explain a little bit about that? And this top guy, do you ever bring him into Florida?
Well, he hasn't been here in quite some time, Reverend Hoyt, and but I definitely will put you in touch with his contacts, because there are a few places in the country. Santa Fe is one of them, and a few others in the New England area, and especially in Indiana, where he's located in Camp Chesterfield. And so several times a year, you can even fly up there, typically during seminary times for Camp Chesterfield, when the students are on campus, and he typically holds off-campus activities that the students and various teachers and people can participate in. So we'll put you in touch with them.
Yeah, because that to me is worth. I mean, if you got one of these baskets where before you die, you got to do this. I mean, that's one of the things I would definitely want to see.
You need to see it. It's I hate to say it's a dying art, and but it's so rare, and it is so rarely demonstrated. You've got to see it before they close their doors. And but definitely. What else did you want to ask?
Well, talk a little bit about, first of all, about your church and about your sort of effort to try to provide evidential material for mediums and your rating mediums and controls and that kind of thing.
So for about the last, I'd say 14 years now, since 2007, I've been running the Metaphysical Chapel of South Florida. We're based in Fort Lauderdale and downtown. And I wanted to create a center of light because what I found was there was very little organized gathering of teachers or mystics or healers or ministers. People, I wanted a place where these professionals could be brought into to provide a source of education, much like Arthur Findlay. I wanted a place that was a center of light where you could come on retreat, you could come to experience the things that you hear about, things of the Bible even, these very bizarre mystical experiences. And I wanted to bring these professionals to a location where my community could benefit, but I could also benefit, because it was all about me developing as well. So I've extensively grown the chapel, and then we have brought individuals such as Kai Muga, Warren Kaler, and quite a few other physical mediums. And physical mediums, for your viewers who don't know what that word means, mediumship is an individual like myself. And actually, I say everybody, we all can actually sense and connect with spirit, some with greater potential. But as a medium, I connect with spirit. But if I'm a physical medium, that means that I have an extra source of life force power, this ectoplasmic potential, which is a real thing. And spirit, if my spirits are trained and I work with them enough, they can draw this life force out of me to cause physical phenomena, objects to appear into the room, that's apporting, objects to disappear from your room to go to another location. I just heard of a story of a seance group in, I believe it was the UK, in around World War II, where they would bring loaves of bread into the seance room and spirit would asport them away from the seance room into the concentration camps of Germany and Poland. Really amazing. So they can do things like that. They can produce lights. They can produce smells, sounds out of the air, sounds through instruments. They can levitate objects. They can cause objects to go matter through matter. I've witnessed that. Truly incredible experiences with Stuart Alexander, where objects were clearly locked into each other, and within a moment's notice to the room, the objects suddenly were set free, and here I was holding Stuart Alexander's arm that was secured to a chair that had no way of releasing it. And the restraints were in full form. They were still connected. They were giant police ties and these incredibly thick cables, and they were gifted to me at the end to bring home. It was amazing.
Wow. Well, what's your website? And I guess because of I know I was going to come down and see Kai there.
Yes,
but
Kai
that was
Julia.
canceled. And so can you give your sort of your website and what you anticipate, like at the end of the year? Have you got anybody coming in near at the end of the year?
Yes, well, I'll tell you this. First, we'll talk about Kai and Julia. So Kai and Julia they're still potentially coming. Nothing's changed. We're still selling tickets for July, or is it June, I believe?
Yeah, June 19th to 23rd,
Yep.
something like that, yeah.
June. And so we will definitely be hosting them unless things change for transportation reasons. They're not able to come from Germany. But tickets are still for sale. If for some reason things cancel, of course, we refund everything. But we'll be scheduling a couple of evenings of materialization cabinet work, which just means we have a beautiful cabinet set up where the medium Kai sits, goes into an altered state. Spirit begins to produce vast amounts of phenomena within darkness, dim red light, and then bright red light, which is truly spectacular. Not many physical mediums in the world will work in that capacity, but we'll see in a 2 to 3 hour experience with him, you will witness objects coming through his body from the spirit world, either shooting out of the hands, out of the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, falling out of the air in front of us in candlelight or red light. You'll witness objects floating through the room. You'll witness objects that matter through matter. You'll witness ectoplasm, which is in lighted conditions. You'll witness potentially faces in the ectoplasm, which is really quite strange. But the 2 times in the last probably 5 times we have hosted him, 5 seasons, individuals from my community have recognized their loved ones in the ectoplasm, those faces in the ectoplasm. So that was truly remarkable to me. It was not just random faces, but it was highly evidential. That's pretty powerful. And so we're going to be also having 2 other evenings, which we call initiation seances. And those are more geared towards table phenomena, table tipping, levitation, the do's and don'ts in practicing and working with table tipping. And then also he has the cabinet set up in the back of the room with a lot of musical instruments and spiritual instruments. And all the time while we're all awake and around this table, spirit is over across the room, levitating objects, bringing up, levitating them above our heads, which is pretty crazy, sometimes dropping them on us. And but instruments are played off in a distance, and yet we are all either holding hands or literally right around each other, right in front of the table, with lights, with dim red lights on, so we can see everything around us, just not off in the distance where some phenomena takes place. So that's amazing. Later in the year, we'll be having the trance medium, Claudia, and her husband, Bill Collar. They'll be coming in from Switzerland. And so it's not physical medium per se, but it is mental mediumship and trance, demonstrations from the platform, private readings, and also trance demonstrations and workshops. So that'll be in November later this year. They'll be coming in from Switzerland.
Is she like a trance child, or is she got a control, or is she?
Yes, both.
So she has no recollection of what's going on.
No, and truly, I say, you know, a lot of times people say they're trance mediums, and it may be just an aspect of their altered mind influencing them. But truly, I know with her, there are some pretty incredible phenomena and synchronicities that take place when she demonstrates her trance work. And then also even when she's off camera at home, I've heard of a lot of stories where peculiar objects appear in her proximity, and that are very synchronistic to what's happening in her life, and just amazing things. I can't really go into a lot of it on air, but amazing woman. So I'm excited to see.
Send me a link. I didn't know. Like I'm sort of new to this. You guys sort of got me going down this road here, and
sure,
and I know you were talking about David Thompson might be coming to Florida in October or whatever.
Yes, I believe. I don't know the dates exactly, but I do know David Thompson, who is a profound physical medium, probably the second physical medium I ever experienced many, many years ago, will be back in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida, at the Sarasota Center of Light for numerous demonstrations, seances, private readings, public lectures, and public divine services as well. If any of your viewers have the opportunity to fly to Sarasota to see that, I highly recommend it, because the volume of materializations and phenomena that takes place within a 2-hour seance is truly remarkable. A lot of evidence comes forward from these guides who are speaking to the sitters in the room, the attendees, and truly a remarkable experience. And the guests, the sitters, will have opportunities to search the room, to search the medium, to search the cabinet, to search the instruments. And there's also preparatory instructions that are given to prepare you to enter this experience, especially if it's your first time, because it's so otherworldly. It either blows your mind or you totally love it, because it is an otherworldly experience. And a lot of time when I'll admit this right now, when I first, the first probably 5 seances I went to with David, I just knew he was a master magician, because I couldn't figure out how in the heck he could get out of all those restraints. How was he getting all of his clothing turned inside out, backwards? And somehow they were still, the restraints were going through the clothing and around the furniture. And so it just was mind-blowing. It truly was mind-blowing, but definitely it's worth the time and the investment to go and experience that. But you'll see a lot of things. So definitely, you'll probably see me over there too.
Yeah, I've applied to go. I haven't got my permission to go yet, but I have. If I can go, I'm going to. I can't miss that either. A question related to that, because David Thompson has, like, Louis Armstrong and various people. I was talking to Walter last week, I guess it was, and I asked him about this, because in the UFO phenomena, what you do is you have these. For example, there's a woman that we just interviewed who talked about being on board the ship, and they brought Albert Einstein on there, and they brought Albert Schweitzer and Nikola Tesla. And so I asked her the question. I said, so were they physical people? And she said, I know what you're talking about. It may have been a hologram, but they sure looked physical to me. And I see the sort of the parallel with the sort of the manifestations of people that appear in the seances. So have you actually had one of them touch you or whatever, so you could actually say, yeah, this is a physical phenomenon, this is not like because a lot of people think it's, oh, it looks like a spirit or whatever, but it's actual physical phenomena.
Absolutely. So let me tell you a couple of interesting principles about that, because when I went to David's, there's an individual, a spirit being named Quentin Crisp, who is an iconic British comedian and a gay gentleman. He passed away many years ago. I actually got to meet him in person and shake his hand when I was in New York City just before he died. And it was very interesting because it goes to show that even though you've met the person, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will remember you in the spirit world. And I thought that was interesting, because when Quentin approached me and was being very cheeky and teasing me and teasing a lot of people in the room and talking to us, and I said, Quentin, do you remember me? I said, I brought you a huge bouquet of Casablanca white lilies, and I wanted to just honor you for the work that you've done in the world. And I said, I said, you remember shaking my hand and me talking to you in this gift? And he said, no, I met tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. I don't remember you. I'm sorry, but I'm here now. And he said, would you like to shake my hand? And I said, really? I said, I'd love to. And so next thing I put my hand into the darkness, and it was really interesting because I shook his hand a few years earlier in New York City, and he was a very effeminate gay man. Who took very good care of himself, and his hands at the time, I remembered, were like a woman's hand. They were very soft, very frail, and very little, like little fingers and things, little hand. So a very effeminate hand. Well, when I put my hand out into the darkness, what came to me was a effeminate, warm, a soft and supple little hand, and the fingers were spindly like a little woman's. And it felt like an old woman's hand. It was, that blew my mind. And because the evidence of me touching him reminded me exactly of how he felt when I met him. But his consciousness somehow didn't remember me, which when we cross into spirit has told us, you don't become all-knowing. You still are fallible. This only reconfirms what I've also been told in other settings, is I was simply one of the masses, and there was no need for his spirit to really know me. I simply brought him a gift and disappeared into the night. So that was fascinating. But these experiences with spirit, I've shaken the hands of William, the main control, and when that hand came forward, the hand literally had fingers like sausages. They were massive. The hand was massive. And David has a little hand with stubby fingers. And David's not a big guy. David Thompson is a pretty average guy, maybe 5'8", I don't know, 5'8". And that shocked me, because it literally felt like I was touching a warm puppet's hand, if for lack of a better word, but it literally felt like a human hand. It was just enormous, and it didn't make sense. And other people have reported the same thing. So truly remarkable to be touched. And I'll say this also, when I was with Kai Muga a couple of years ago, he does a segment where he'll put out a candle. We actually light the candle and place it out into the room. And so Spirit instructed us to count to 3, light the candle, and I was to crawl out into the middle of the room, set the candle down, come back to my chair. So I did that. And suddenly the curtain began to slowly open, and on the other side of the room, which I couldn't see, they saw a foot of a little girl coming out, and little toes that moved. And then the curtain closed, and then the curtain reopened closer on my side. And as I looked over, I could see an arm pulling out, like a tiny little arm. It looked like a doll's arm, but it was the color of gray clouds. It literally looked like, if I could make a human body out of clouds, that's what it looked like. It was a little arm. And as we spoke, and we could tell the child, we said, we can see your arm, move your hand or something. And suddenly she moved her little fingers, tiny little fingers, and they were all independent of each other. They were not like a doll's hand being stuck out of a cabinet. And that was shocking, that we could actually see something like that. And I forgive you. It was not Kai Muga. It was actually Warren Kaler, because it was one of the little girls, Jessica, who's about 2 or 3 years old, who will make her appearance randomly from time to time in his seance. So I'm sorry, that was Warren Kaler. But that was the first time I've ever physically seen spirit. And it literally looks like what I would think ectoplasm would look like if it took a form. But we do have accounts, historical accounts in many books, where they said that the spirit entities who took on physical form from the ectoplasm took on human flesh color. They took on pinks and the greens and the blue tones and the browns of the skin and the white patches or dark patches. And so for this experience, it was ectoplasmic, and it was definitely very grayish white. It was most bizarre, but I'm so honored to have been able to see that.
Can you explain ectoplasm and what your concept of the process is? I was interviewing a guy last night who had a being appear to him, and he described a pillar of light, then this small ball comes, and out of the small ball comes this being. It takes form. But this is a different sort of process. It's almost the same thing. It's coming from some sort of etheric plane into the physical, right, and it has to have something to manifest into the physical, lower its vibration or whatever. So explain your principle of what's happening with ectoplasm, because some people may not know what we're talking about here.
Sure. So it's interesting you mentioned, the gentleman who talked about that ball of light, that sphere of energy, and a beam came, and then suddenly the materialization or the buildup of the form, it definitely sounds holographic, doesn't it? And, it's really interesting. I'll tell you what Spirit says about the whole principle of bringing their voice or even their body, the physical structure of their body into the room. What they do for their voice, we'll start with that. Spirit says the way they're able to bring their voice, their actual voice, into the room through objects or out of the midair, even through a ectoplasmic formation on a shoulder or up in the corner. But the way they do it is they go into a booth, a structure in spirit, in a location, and in this location is a type of ectoplasm that is built up on the spirit side that is connected to the medium's ectoplasm that's being extrapolated and built up on our physical side, on the third dimensional side. And so as they're told that they place their face into this, it's almost like a bowl of ectoplasm, the spiritual substance, and as they immerse themselves into it, it wraps around their head and they begin to speak into it. And every time you go to these spiritual circles, almost all the time they will say, Kevin, can you hear me? Does my voice sound all right? Is it strong enough? Is it too weak? Is it broken? What do I need to speak slower? And it's interesting that they cannot hear themselves, and they tell us the technology doesn't really work that way. It's a one-way transmission, and they sense our response verbally or from our heart or our energetic field, and even our thoughts, if they're capable of monitoring that. And not all spirits can monitor your thoughts. They can't read your mind. Some can if they're trained, but not all. And so anyway, in that same principle, they've also said that they go into a location where they merge their body into the ectoplasmic field that's created in spirit, and they begin to it instantly builds the same form in our dimension, almost like a puppet, or it's like a mask, if you will. And it's exactly how Spirit says. They take that ectoplasmic life force of the medium, and they literally coat it over the spiritual body to give it a physical form, so it has a physical effect in our dimension. They can pick up objects and have the objects float around or be delivered, or they can use the what do they call it? It's like a spiritual force that they can use to speed up the atomic structure, so they can literally pull it into their dimension, manipulate it if they want, change it, or just relocate it to a new location within the room or some other place. And that's pretty much how they do how the process works when they're demonstrating matter through matter. So they'll rev up the energy, the subatomic energy. The object gets hot as you think it would, and when they're done and you're touching it, you can feel heat emanating from the object because it's been sped up, but then instantly slowed down to come back into our dimension.
Wow, that's like an apport. I mean, there was some research done in Britain where apports did 12 to 15 degrees Celsius. When they were moved from one place to another, they actually heated up. And
Wow.
we actually find that there's actually Desta. I don't know if you've met Desta. She's one of my assistants, a producer for
Wow.
me. We were at the University of Arizona. We were looking at James McDonald's files, and
Huh.
he was a big UFO researcher in the 1960s, a professor at the University of Arizona. And in his files, we found this photograph of a piece of metal from
Mhm.
it was 1939, Illinois, and it came flying out of the sky, and like a meteorite thing, and it embedded itself. And the guy saw it, it embedded itself into the garden, and it was like it looked like a spike. It was made out of 99% nickel, and on
Wow.
the top, it had this sort of a bubbly head on it. And of course, this guy didn't know
Wow.
what it was. It's 1939. He has no idea. But it
Wow.
was red hot, and he could not remove it from the garden until it cooled down. He used a knife. He gave it to his daughter, and his daughter didn't know what to do with it. And in 1967, NASA opened a lab in Tucson when they were going to the moon.
Mhm.
And so she took this piece of this spike, which is about that long, down to the lab and said, "Well, what is this? This came flying out of the sky." And they said, "Well, there's nothing made in the sky that has that kind of composition." And they had
Wow.
no idea except to say it was very, very bizarre and very, very pure. And it's the same sort of thing. So you get these parallels
Mhm.
between what you see in the UFO community and what you're seeing in the physical thing. It's almost the same phenomena, and that's where leads me to believe that it may be all coming out of the same area, and it may have just a different sort of way of doing it, or masking, or whatever they're presenting. And then, so
Wow.
it leads to a question: in the spirit world, are they helping? Are they working? Because I've heard these stories that people like Tesla and people like that are actually on the other side, and they're trying to help people on our side run experiments to vindicate and verify this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. You know, you brought up earlier holographic technology. And I'll tell you, there's a woman that I know I'm good friends with. She's from Brazil. Her name is Sonia Rinaldi, and she's working with instrumental transcommunication. And I would recommend, if you can get her on your show, she would be fascinating to talk to, because the lectures, the presentations that she travels and presents are literally jaw-dropping. She receives standing ovations for her work. She's at the forefront, in my opinion, it's my opinion, of ITC technology, and it goes beyond EVP technology, because she's able to receive these holographic images of loved ones. And also she's received them of Tesla, Einstein, and some other, these strange beings that keep appearing in her work. And she understands why they're there. But her work is just revolutionary, because she's using video technology, literally shooting maybe 30 seconds of video and capturing information inside these videos. And she's also capturing it in sound as well, and photographs and things and reflections. Quite fascinating. But with Sonia, with her work, and what we see with definitely with her, with a few other mediums who are trans-channeling, Einstein, Tesla, and different individuals around the world, and even some mediums who work in the seance rooms that are working to bring through zetas and different beings from other dimensions. I believe they're also in touch with some of these scientists, from what I've been told. But Sonia says that with her work, she's discovered that Tesla and Einstein and several others are working in another dimension above the earth. It's an alternate dimension. They don't necessarily call it the spirit world, but it's a type of dimension, almost like what they call the Loka, or the Tala, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. You know, these are alternate dimensions from the Hindu mythology, but we're finding parallels with this alternate dimensions. If I'm not mistaken, NASA has even begun to speak about it, but definitely within the UFO community, they're speaking about the alternate dimensions that are not the astral plane where our loved ones go. And so Sonia is finding that to be true, because some of the what do you call it, evidence, or the results of her experiments are bringing forward strange phenomena that sounds almost robotic or computer-like. And when she speaks and asks questions of it, she's finding out that it seems to be that these intelligences of the scientists, Tesla, Einstein, and others, are literally speaking into this device that transcommunicates their words and their thoughts, and then emits them like a frequency that she's able to receive in her technology. And that's why it sounds so robotic and mechanical in response. It doesn't sound like human. And it's very interesting. So she says there is a type of holographic technology where the scientists and the beings, these aliens, are bringing your loved ones to stand on platforms, and their image is projected holographically for her to receive it in our third dimension. So there is this amazing cross-pollination of the world of metaphysics, the world of ITC technology, mediumship, and mysticism, and UFO phenomena. And it's just, it's an amazing universe. It just blows my mind how many similarities there are.
I was talking to Walter, and I said, you maybe should join in on us. I said we should actually start to put down these type of technology. So you see a lot of stuff on the leading edge. Like, right. It wasn't until you mentioned Sonia, and I contacted her. She hasn't contacted me back yet, but when you told me about her, and I was just, I mean, I've been in this field for a long time, and I didn't know she was doing this kind of stuff. And just the idea where she takes, like where she describes, because a lot of people in the UFO community will do ghost hunting. So they'll take these little spirit boxes and stuff, and they'll have like A, B, and C level, these little voice messages, but most of them you really can't hear. And what she does, and I don't know where she really got the idea, but it was like you take the words, take somebody reading a 10-minute statement, take their words, take all the syllables, and then put it all together and allow the spirit to use that rather than trying to get it out of white noise. And that's when she got 50 messages instead of 2.
That lady, Sonia, is revolutionary, because that was an inspiration she had. She started her work with you know, the static. What was that movie where the little girl's looking at the television at the static?
Were they Poltergeist? No.
Yeah, one of the Poltergeist movies. So anyway, she probably had that inspiration, but she suddenly had this bigger inspiration. What if I could create sound? Sound that could be used by spirit. So she contacted somebody who took sound, like you said, and literally chopped it up into a human garble. And she began to experiment, and she started getting uncanny results because she found if she used a male garbled voice for, if you were trying to make contact with a male spirit, you got beautiful results. And if you took female garbled voice, you would get great results with that if you were seeking a female spirit contact. And if you were looking for a child contact, you could use either sex of child, because they pretty much have the same pitch and tone. And she would take a child's reading, garble it up, and she would get phenomenal evidence in her videography and audiography. Truly amazing work.
The other one that's being used, I don't know if you've got connection, is to the soul phone, where they're using.
I've heard of it. Yes, I've not interacted with that, but I've heard very good things about it. I'll tell you, it's not a pitch, but I'll tell you a couple of times I've worked with these apps that you talked about, the ghost hunting apps. And I had a very, very peculiar experience with one of them. And I cannot remember for the life of me his full name, but I believe his first name is Steve, and he's with the Huffington Paranormal. Very famous gentleman. Anyway, they've produced something called Ethereum, an app. And that app is only has about 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 words in it, and the rest of it is garbled sound.
Wow.
And we took it to Lilydale, and I had an experience where I was supposed to actually support another medium in a public demonstration of mediumship. And there was a few people sat near me, a lady with a dog who she needed this emotional support dog, and her partner was next to the dog. And I don't, and to this day, I don't really know what happened, but I suddenly started to go into an altered state. I couldn't keep my eyes open. I couldn't focus. I was terribly embarrassed because a lot of people were looking at me, and I was supposed to be working. And so I told my friend, finish this for me, and when we're done, I got to get out of here. We finished an hour later. It was the longest hour of my life. But we went to a seance where they had this device, and a bunch of us were sitting around playing. Let's just play with it and see what we can do. So we just opened like a little divine service, said a couple of prayers, did a little mantra, and we just started talking to spirit. And all of a sudden, as we began speaking, it said, "He sleeps."
Wow.
And we said, "What?" And it repeated itself, "He sleeps." And we said, "Well, what does that mean?" And I said, "That's odd. I literally was falling asleep before I came to this." And as we kept going through, it would say these strange things that applied to me. And the lady in charge, Susan Barnes, who's a wonderful medium, she said, Kevin, this app does not have those words. You have to understand how profound this is.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it doesn't have the words? And she said, no, it does not. And she said, okay. We continued on, but as we finished, she said, Kevin, you did great. You close the seance. So I closed the seance in prayer, and I closed as I always do. And I said, and so it is, and so we are. Amen. And just as I said that, the app said, and so it is. And the lady said, I'm going to be getting in touch with Steve. This is unbelievable. So that's the only props and kudos I can give out there for ghost apps, because that's really the only experience I've had. But it really shocked me. But it just goes to show the power of spirit. And sitting around that table, it was a table, there must have been 6 or 8 of us who were mediums, physical mediums, healing mediums in our own right. So we definitely created a very strong field of energy to interact with that app. And so I'm sure that it really helped the app to put together the garbled sounds to create words. It was remarkable.
And another thing, you just mentioned another thing that parallels to the UFO community. So what you'll have is these C5 things that Stephen Greer invented. He was taken on board a ship when he's about 18 years old, and they gave him these protocols for what's called C5 protocols. And a lot of people do them, but the people will vary this and that. And I was involved in the Mission Rama, which is the Peruvian contactees, kids who meditated from the time they were 14 years old, and they're all these sort of high-level contacts. And what they do there is almost the same thing as a seance circle. Is you'll do the mantras and you'll do the meditation and all this kind of stuff in a circle, everybody there, and it's to raise the vibration. And I know that's part of what's involved with you,
right?
Is that nothing will happen unless the people are raising vibration. So that's why you don't want people who are, because that's what happens in the circle. I noticed with the CE5 thing is there's people with lasers, and they're supposed to be meditating and doing mantras, and they're shooting lasers up in the sky and they're looking for UFOs. They're not into the game. And that's an important part, correct? That you have to raise the vibration inside the circle.
It incredibly helps the circle work of mediums or healers or intuitives in general, is if we can stay in one accord and get together in that circle, and we lift up the vibration of one intention that's of a positive and a very, I'll say godly, but if people aren't into God, at least positive, higher vibrations, just of good intention of making contact with a higher consciousness. And it makes the work a lot easier. And we find the phenomena tends to not happen, and the contact tends to not be so easy when we're not in one accord. And so it makes sense that these children in Peru and South America, they're doing exactly what every culture does, is they get together in one accord. What does it say in the Bible, the ancient text? When you pray and speak to God with one accord as a group of individuals, powerful things of transformation can take place. Well, it's really interesting because those are very metaphysical principles that you find in very ancient Judeo-Christian texts, 2,000, 3,000 year old texts. And so this stuff has been practiced for so long. Really, metaphysics is why all world religions came forward, because it came from higher principles through the prophetic individuals of their cultures and times.
Exactly.
Individuals that were these young kids. They were so connected to the psychic mind or the cosmic mind of the universe that they were able to bring through bits of knowledge that to filter in and to feed to their culture. So it's so important. When you've got skeptics in the room, it definitely dampens, and Spirit says it sets up like a barrier that they have to dig through to get to us. And if you are fearful, that's just as bad as being highly skeptical. You can be a positive, open skeptic, and that does not offend them or does not affect the work. But definitely if you're a negative skeptic, you're very closed-minded and you're there scientifically to prove it's wrong, well, you already have an agenda. So you're setting a barrier. There's a barrier between you and the phenomena. And the phenomena won't manifest, if at all. It will manifest in a limited way.
Yeah, that's the same thing that happens in the circle. And that's sort of, it sort of goes along with the theory that I got, is that your skepticism and your fear come from your left brain. And the reason that we can't interact with Spirit is because our rational analytical left brain is creating so much noise you can't pick up the signal. So if you go into meditation or into prayer or into mantra or something, and you shut the left brain down, you get rid of that noise, and the signal can be picked up.
Yep. So, I mean, that's a beautiful thing, what you just said, which was the fact that we're so disconnected with all this stuff coming at us, Zoom technology, cell phones,
Yeah.
iPads, my watches, my car speaks to me, my refrigerator speaks to me. We're so connected to everything, and we're so disconnected from nature. And think about the Native American Indians. I have friends who are Lakota medicine men,
Yeah.
and they tell me stories of their mentors, their medicine men who trained them, of how they would know that people were coming down the road, coming from a great distance. Objects would be appearing soon. That spirit was communicating with them that XYZ, a disease, was going to be hitting the community soon. They knew things before it would happen because they were so incredibly attached to nature and in tune with nature. And we've become greatly not in tune, for lack of a better word. We're not in tune with it anymore. So it's difficult for us to make contact with spirit unless we shut the door, go into a meditation room, turn off everything, and do what we can to raise the vibration and to slow down the thinking mind. Yeah, it's a key part of every culture.
Beautiful.
Good point.
And you mentioned before, I think we had the interview, you have sort of an institute that sort of tries to validate mediums and stuff like that. Can you go into that and
Yes.
what kind of work you've done lately in terms of trying to, because that's how I think we talked about the DNA experiment. Like if you get a DNA experiment that would actually produce some sort of something on paper is changing, or if you do an MRI where we know with people who are doing speaking in tongues or praying, their brain pattern actually changes, and you can actually tell what a praying brain pattern looks like because it's actually been done. They put people in MRIs. And,
I love that.
So
that
I think you're doing good work in terms of setting up like an institute where you actually give number of stars, or whether this person is hitting all the marks, that you have to almost like having a license in order to get in.
Sure. So the organization is called the International Society for the Standards of Mediumship and Psychical Investigation. It's a long name, but it basically, the short abbreviation is ISIMPI, ISSIMPI. So anyway, this organization is a international body of individuals, mediums, researchers, and just people who support the work of mediumship in general, psychical investigational work as well. And I'm the USA director for the organization. The organization has come to my church, the Metaphysical Chapel of South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, which people can go to metaphysicalchapel.com and check it out. But our facility has been identified as a gold standard center because we have a seance room space, and that room has been checked out. It's been checked out for validity, and we've used it for probably about 6 years now with the organization of ISIMPI. And we have brought in physical mediums who are put under test conditions. At my location, we've only had that assessment once, but definitely the founder and the president of ISIMPI came to be a part of that. And the organization basically assesses whether a center is ready to put people through security measures. We are bound by policies as a gold certified center to we send out notices and instructions how people need to prepare themselves, how they need to act as they're coming, the hours and days before the seance, as they approach the evening, what are they allowed to bring into the room? What are they not allowed to bring into the room? We actually don't allow them to bring anything other than their car keys and a driver's license. We've verified they're the person who made the reservation. Even before that, I'm interviewing them. You mentioned for Sarasota, you have not been approved.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing. I will not, you can buy a ticket. Doesn't mean you're going to come to the seance, because I've got to sit and talk to you to see why are you even interested in coming.
Yeah.
And we've had to turn a few people away who are more scientifically minded, journalists and people who wanted to do their own research, not associated with any organization, because we wanted to protect the integrity of the work and protect the medium. I didn't want random strangers coming. So we're very careful who we bring. We want to make sure that the people have a serious interest in the phenomena or the spiritual work that's taking place, or just the reverence of the work. And so when people come to these experiences, they are patted down. We also do metal detection, and I also have infrared well, it's a device that I use. It's infrared and also radio frequency as well. And I can look through the device and see if there are any recording devices with lenses on the body or in any of inside their glasses or
Wow.
pins on the body buttons. So I can look into, you can actually see it because I tested it. I took a friend of mine's spy camera pin
Wow.
and I looked through the device, and you can actually see the lens lights up like a little bright light. So that's how you can find them quickly and easily in this strange red apparatus.
Wow.
And but it also has a radio frequency technology. So when I pass this object, this device by a person, I can see if they're emitting a radio frequency as well.
Wow.
So that will alert you. And then the people are brought into the room. The medium is also Kai Muga would allow us to strip search him in the office. A couple of my board members, myself and another, down to his underwear, and nothing else on. And we definitely could tell there was nothing hidden. And some mediums allow for bodily pat downs and things like that. So we try to get as personal as we can, maintaining dignity. But we also we really encourage and allow the first-time guests, who tend to be your biggest skeptics, to come into that experience. I want them to check the room out. I want you to look in my cash drawer that I'm collecting at the front desk. I want you to look in the bags in the corner that are my administrative bags, or all purses and backpacks are left out of the room, so those aren't there. They can check anything, people's shoes in the room. They can check under the tables, the chairs, the medium himself, the cabinet, the cloth, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They can check everything, because we want them to basically feel that they are satisfied that everything is on the up and up. And if we can rule out any kind of fraudulent activity or potential items, and the doors are sealed and the lights go off and nobody has left the room, then it's only us and the medium. And so if we're all holding hands and the medium's in front of us and we can hear him and see him, then who is this that's carrying this object through the room? Or how are these objects literally apporting into the room? And actually, I brought up a file, if you would like me to share that with your viewers, because I have a file of probably about 20 different apports that have come through Kai Muga.
Oh my goodness.
Some of them I've actually witnessed in person. Some I've just been shared. I've received these images. So if you will allow me, I'm going to share my screen.
Beautiful.
And I'll just skim through them quickly.
You're on my favorite subject.
And people are going to see, here we go. People are going to see
fantastic.
These objects. Okay. What do you see on your screen, please?
You need to make the screen bigger to go to the full screen. Okay. But I can see the little statuette in the hand there. There you're going full screen. Yeah, if you click.
Okay, bear with me, audience.
Yeah, you should be able to click on the image and it should open up in a.
Oh, yes. Pardon me. You're
exactly right. And then you should be able to just go from one to the other just by.
I tell you what, can you see this? It's the face of Kai?
Yeah.
No.
On the right-hand side, yeah, it's a bigger image, yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I hope that you can see this. This is actually a movie, and it's about 1 minute long.
Okay.
And you're going to witness an apport come through the medium's eye, that orifice of the eye. It will come from the lower lid. He's in an altered state of trance right now, and his wife is speaking to the spirit who is controlling him.
No, we can't say. I still have the
no problem.
Kai Muga apports on this screen.
Okay, no problem. I think I know what I need to do. Bear with me.
Okay.
It's always something. Here, let's.
Yeah, well, we get this down, and then I'm going to learn something here too.
Okay, so you should be able to see.
Oh, there we are. Okay, now you got the video. Yeah. Okay, so this is Kai Muga, right?
Right. This is Kai Muga, and this is one of the many experiences. You can actually go to YouTube and see on his channels several very similar things. One of them even has me speaking to spirit, coaching this object out of his eye, as though it's a child coming through. It's really kind of funny.
Wow.
And
I think Kai pointed out the fact that even the little piece of dust will affect your eye, and you take a look at what's coming out of his eye here.
Tremendously. You could see that the lower lid suddenly got full there. His finger is in the way, that he's going to move it, but the lower lid has swollen.
Yeah.
He's going to encourage it to come out.
This is being done with red light?
This is being done with a cell phone camera.
Okay.
He's speaking German.
Yeah. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
And there it's the last one is coming out.
But I'd like to get a skeptic to try this. Let's see them duplicate this.
Definitely, because let me tell you, so that's a perfect example of that. And just quickly to show you these objects, I will show you some of these other ones that have come forward. And let's see, can you see? Let's see if you can see this one right here.
Grab the screen. You got to grab the screen.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
A little better?
Yeah, there you go. Now it's full. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this is an example of one of the many brass statues that actually they drop out of the air in his seances and are very common gifts for his recipients.
That's Kai as well, right?
Yes, these are all Kai's apports over the last several years. Those actually came out of his eyes. I was at dinner with him in Germany, and we had just left, and as he got in his car, they began to come out of his eyes, and we captured those. That's a small image, but you can see these as well.
Wow.
You can see that. See some of the statues and some of those, and those stones have appeared in his seance room as well.
Any significance to the statues?
It just has something to do with what spirit is doing with the individual, which of these guides. So the gentleman who received the Saraswati brass statue had actually been praying and doing a mantra for 40 days the night he received it at our church from spirit. It was truly amazing.
Wow.
But you can see the size of these, and you see those large stones, the blue stone, the amber stone. I'm going to show you one because one materialized in front of our eyes in red light, and it was, we call them center stones, and these stones connect the individuals who receive them to a grid of light or an energy around the planet and with spirit. And so it keeps us all in tune together for the work that we're doing. Wow. These are just various, quite large center stones.
How big would that be?
The red one probably is about 3 to 4 inches tall.
Wow.
And they're about 3 to 4 inches across. I'm going to show you the one that I received. Look at the shape, this bizarre shape. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, beautiful. These ingots and little trinkets that appear. Rings will appear with solid semi-precious gems in them. Wow. And these will come through his ears, his eyes, his nose, his mouth. Just beautiful little objects. There, and you can see at the very bottom, it's very interesting because they have this plug in them. Yeah. And sometimes I even will find scrolls or little pieces of paper with ancient writing on them on the inside, little prayers and things. So those will hold prayers.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. So I wanted to show you that, but actually this is my little precious gem. This is what I received.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. This is what I received a few years ago. And we were in upstate New York in Lilydale at a private seance with the president of the organization, Dr. Neil Rispowski. And Dr. Neil is a physical medium as well, who demonstrates different types, different things, table tipping and trance mediumship. He's a Lakota medicine man in his own right. But this object appeared in bright red light in front of us, on command of spirit, and it happened. The entranced medium Kai was manipulating his hands into the air like this and grunting. Spirit was making him grunt, and suddenly this flash came out of his hand and filled the room. You could feel it touch you, and this appeared on the floor in front of all of us, and we were shocked. And then of course, Spirit said, because of the work of my center and because I'm trying so hard to bring forward a center of light into existence, they wanted to connect me with the grid of light for the work that I do. So I was so honored to receive this beautiful center stone that you can see.
It's almost like a gift for your work. Because I remember you saw the interview I did with Sandy Ingham, and she got one from Spirit
Yes.
for her work. She thought they were talking about somebody else, but it was for her. So that's an incredible,
Amazing.
nice, beautiful piece.
But we saw it on, but it literally, it literally apported in front of our eyes in bright red light, and 25 people saw it enter the room.
Wow.
Truly remarkable, just the power of spirit, and just goes to show that what we think is reality is not reality. There's so much more potential there, and it all has to do with the mind somehow. The mind is involved in it all.
The consciousness, yeah. Well, I'm glad to help try to get the message out, because I've only been doing I've known about physical mediums, but I didn't really realize how significant it was. And I think the more people that see you talking about this kind of stuff and showing this stuff, and people who where they realize that there's actual some real strict scientific work going on in terms of trying to vindicate that this is actually what's going on, I think it will change the world, that people realize it's not the physical world you think it is. That's
true. I hope so. We need more research.
Yeah. There was one thing I mentioned, I talked to Walter about it, whether you guys, and maybe it was just the one seance. The one thing that impressed me the most was the thing with the voices, where you have the voice moving around the room, and they had the microphones on the wall, and you could actually tell where the voice was. That was, I would love to have that everywhere, because that was just so impressive to see this voice moving, and you could see the people talking, and this voice is moving around. He says, "I'm right here, and I'm right here," and he's moving around the room. It was just amazing? So impressive.
Leave it to the Dutch. The Dutch are quite intelligent, and that was a Dutch researcher, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember his name, but it was truly amazing to be able to see the presence of voice and how it would shift around the room so quickly.
Yeah.
And but they could still identify through the signatures of the bodies in the room where all the attendees and the medium was at all times.
Yeah.
Truly remarkable research that one was.
Yeah. I think we're getting there in terms of understanding, like especially when you get to Soul Phone, where they've been working on this at length with, I think they say they got like 24 scientists and people working with them on the other side to work on this kind of stuff. And I think anything I can do to help, and Walter and I actually said to Walter, we should make a list of some of this stuff to, where this stuff should go, because it's sort of nice to sort of discuss it.
Wow.
But I think the technology is actually there. In fact, there's people who inside the UFO community who claim that in CE5s they can actually have this stuff come across radios, like hand radios and stuff like that, where somebody in California will say, okay, you're about to get the signal, and all of a sudden these little radios that you only have maybe 2-mile range will suddenly all start going at the same time.
Wow.
And I think that's where we got to start working on is the technology, I think, is there where we can start to validate that some of this stuff is actually what people have always said it is.
Fantastic. It's exciting, all this stuff. How far along are they with the Soul Phone?
They were supposed to do the first demonstrations in January, and then they said they created something else and they put off the demonstrations. But they're to the point where they can do one letter at a time or something. They can, and they're using very sophisticated technology in terms of like the spirit breaking a little light beam inside it, and they can do it when they're not even in the room. They can actually tape it, and the spirit does it in the middle of the night. And they're doing these things with mediums with triple blind and quadruple blind things, where the guy doing the reading, the person's not in the room, there's no sort of feedback that they can sort of work off and stuff like that. And you see that people have actually started to take it seriously, and I don't see how you can, the only reason that you would not believe anymore is because you just haven't read the evidence, because it's incredible what people are doing. So I'm glad you're doing the stuff you're doing down there. And especially this precipitation medium. When I saw that, I go like, wow, that is just, I mean, it's more, because a lot of times in the UFO community, people will go and they'll sit for a whole weekend out at Mount Shasta or something like that, and they're waiting for one light to flash in the sky or a thing to fly by. And I'm going like, wow, man, you should go to one of these things and see the stuff.
You sure should.
Because it would just, I mean, if you saw that precipitation medium or a port appear in the middle of the room, I mean, you got to be blown away. You got to go like, wow, the world is.
Especially with Kai Muga, it is shocking to witness the volume and the quality of the phenomena, even in bright light. Even when we make when I ask people to leave the room, and I'm waking Kai up with his wife, and we're getting the room set back up for the guest to come back in and let the medium rest for a moment, there's still objects literally falling out of the air. You can't even see where it's coming from. And sometimes you can see a shimmer. You actually do see it's like a light in the air that shimmers and beams, and something will fall out of it, and you can hear it hit the floor.
Wow.
Yeah, so it definitely happens. It's amazing to witness this stuff, but definitely we'll get you put in touch with Reverend Hoyt for Precipitation Mediumship, and he's at Camp Chesterfield. And you can't call the camp; they are not there to support his ministry. Let's just say,
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
But you know, a jealousy. But fortunately, I have contact with him, and I'll put you in touch with him.
Wow. Anything you'd like to get across that we haven't talked about in terms of where we should go or what you're doing? Because I think what you guys are doing is important down there in terms of bringing in these people from around the world, because there's not that many that travel, right? There's physical mediums. There's only about half a dozen that actually travel around.
Yep. There's about half a dozen. You're exactly right. And I would say, you know what, even more than just me, I would say, you know, even for the viewers, if you are curious about developing yourself or bringing this to your area, start hosting local events for several months, and then eventually start building up to people from out of state, and then build up to people from out of the country. Because within about a year or two, you should be able to create enough following that you can begin hosting these people with these abilities, and they can come and demonstrate, and they can come teach and do workshops. And you literally will provide other avenues, new doors for these people to come and work, these mediums. And we need more centers of light. Mine is doing fine, but we definitely need more places for them to go, because there's not many places in the world that can really host them properly. And so we need people who are serious about the work and that are willing to experiment and research, and willing to fall on their face, or willing to look behind a scary door and see what's really going on. And you know, life isn't perfect, but we've got to do the best we can to carry forward the work of mediumship and paranormal in general, whether it be UFOs or EBEs or things like that. We have to investigate all this stuff and see how it cross correlates. We all live in the same universe, so it definitely is all going to cross correlate.
Yeah, and I'll do what I can to try to get you on the circuit in terms of. But the thing I mentioned to you before is the UFO community is still really nuts and bolts. They're waiting for the aliens to drop off the engine and the free energy, and then get lost, and they don't realize it's all a consciousness phenomena. And so, I've sort of made the move. 2012, I made the move out of the nuts and bolts into the sort of the consciousness and the spirituality, and that's what I say to people in UFO phenomena. That when it's all said and done, after 45 years, I'm going to tell you what, it's going to be a lot less physical than you think it is. It's going to be a lot more spiritual than you think it is. And a lot of people in the UFO community are not happy about that. They do not want that to happen. They want the free energy and all this evil aliens and all this kind of nonsense. So, but I do have some contact with the consciousness community, which should be more into this, and I'll see what I can do. There's a big conference in Los Angeles, it is the biggest in the world, Consciousness Life Expo, where I think like someone like you should go in there and be able to speak to this community, because that's where they're claiming we're into consciousness. This is what it's about. Right. And I think everybody's sort of missing the physical mediumship and that aspect of mediumship and physical mediumship and precipitation mediumship. That everybody's maybe into meditation, or they're into healing, which a lot of people, energy healing and stuff. But I think your field is something I'm really going to push, because when I saw it, I said it's some of the best evidence in terms of looking at a light in the sky compared to what you guys have been producing in these various
it's really
sessions that you're doing. It's like mind-boggling, and it has to change your world to say, wow, it's a different world. These guys, and it's just a matter of trying to validate it, and whatever I can do to help you guys validate this, that there's an actual test that you can say, if you're a skeptic, come in, we'll put you on Facebook and we'll see you do this. And you make the brain pattern, or you make these things pop out of your eyes or whatever. Right. We'll see if you can do it. And I'm sure nobody will take you up on it, but I really appreciate the work you've done. And
you're welcome.
And your church, so go finally to your church. And I guess you're online now. You don't have the services anymore?
Yep. So we're doing our Sunday services every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so people just need to go to facebook.com/Metaphysical Chapel. And you can find the church that way, the ministry. Just like and follow the page, and you'll be notified when we go live. And then I'm doing a lot more now that I'm home more. I'm telling you, I've been able to do a whole lot of work at home in my office now that I'm on forced vacation, which is actually, you know what? And I have to say this, I'm not in a state of fear. I am loving my time off
Wow.
And I think it just like you said earlier, we're so distracted in life. I admit I'm very type A, I'm very driven, and I get myself very distracted, but I have been able to pull back and just enjoy nature, working on my little spiritual projects and my technology and advancing some things, getting me ready. I'm basically preparing for what's to come behind the scenes. And it's been a great time of preparation. So I'm not in a state of fear, and I just see it as a time I am cautious. But it's a time of just reevaluating what's important to me. What do I think I can do for viewers like your viewers? What can I do for these conferences like the one in LA? How can I make contact with those? But I got to start doing it today. So that's what I'm working on.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you.
Thank you
I
so
love your
much.
work. And anytime you have something like you've got somebody coming in to
Sure.
Florida, or you want to promote something, we can go through and go into a little more detail as to who Claudia is, or Kai Muga, or
Absolutely.
David Thompson. We can do a little show and sort
Ab-
of a promo as to what's
They'd
going
be
to
honored.
happen, because then people will know, because I think it's just you in Santa Fe where this stuff takes place, right?
Pretty much, yes. There is one place, like I said, up at Lilydale. There's an
Okay.
off-site location with the former president, and he hosts a lot of physical mediums from around the world. But in addition, I mentioned he's a Lakota medicine man practitioner. He's a white guy, but he's practicing Lakota.
Yeah.
And he hosts a lot of physical mediums and also Lakota mediums. I'm sorry, that was disrespectful. Lakota medicine men. They don't like the word medium.
Yeah.
And their work is truly a very, it's almost a totally different organism. It's a different connection with the universe than the way we work in my circles.
Yeah.
And it truly is powerful, the results and the phenomena that we see, but it's so ancient. And I highly recommend, especially you, to go and immerse yourself in that, because I want you to see another part of reality as well.
Yeah. You've seen, I've done a few interviews with medicine men types, shaman people, because I think that's where they basically started it. I mean, they've been with nature the whole time.
Totally.
And
Totally.
so they're sort of on the leading edge. That people would
Yep.
say that physically, they don't have the cars and all the money that
Right.
everybody else has, but in terms of spirituality, I mean, they understand the connection to Gaia. They understand
Yep.
spirituality and stuff like that. And so I've had them on, and
Yep.
I agree with you that we have to move the world in this way, and maybe that's what this virus is all about. I call it the Oneness Virus, where it's sort of waking everybody up, and you realize that 2.5 million cells die in your body every second, and this is the way the world works. And people are sort of really shaken out of this world that we're in, and have taken time to try to figure out how we can work together, how are we going to beat this thing. And you see the world has completely shifted in a couple of months, and so
Wow.
you can see the bad side of it, but you can also see the good side of what's going on.
That's true.
So
Well, you're doing a good part. Thank you so much for
thank you, Kevin.
having me be a part of this today, and just to be able to share again, because I want people to get this information, and just to really hear it from a perspective that I try to present it as user friendly as possible. And I want people to recognize that if I can come off of a little farm in Texas, a little ranch, and I can evolve beyond the religious and cultural, very prejudicial and very conservative upbringing. If I can do that, anybody can. You just got to be willing to open the door, and we don't have to be so skeptical. And yes, this stuff will blow your mind, but give it a chance, because I'm telling you, I wouldn't be wasting my breath if I suspected it was not real. I know it's real. I've witnessed reality.
Wow. Thank
Yeah.
you, Reverend Kevin
You're
Lee.
welcome.
You're a hero of mine. I love your stuff, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
we'll meet up in Florida in June, and if not June, maybe later in the year. And
Absolutely.
when you get the precipitation mediumship down, and I'm going to come, and
We
I'm
will
going
do it.
to I'm going to watch this.
We'll
But
do it.
I would love to see that, when especially if you see some of the photos of some of the cards. I was just blown away. I'm going,
Yeah.
there's no way. This is just
Yeah.
wow. It's like
There's
20 seances at one time. I mean, it's not one event. You've got like piles of events all happening at
yeah.
the same time.
It's truly amazing.
Dramatic.
It's amazing. We'll get you to one of them. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.